This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Acer Aspire R13. This is a 13.3-inch Windows convertible laptop, and if you look at the lid, which is kind of not bad, attractive, shiny, looks like glass. Notice this unusual thing right here? Well, remember the Dell XPS 12? It sort of works like that. It does the laptop thing just fine, but it has what Acer still calls the Easel Hinge. This is a lot more normal as a laptop goes than the Acer R7 was. Remember the one that had the kind of Star Trek keyboard that was shifted over here and the trackpad was on top? All gone. This is very normal. Starts at $9.99, pretty well equipped. We're going to look at it now. So this is the Acer Aspire R13. This is Acer's latest 13.3-inch, kind of high-endish for them, convertible. And it sure is different. Acer is never afraid of trying new things. First off, I actually kind of like this. It looks like glass. Remember the Acer Aspire S7? I believe it's plastic as far as I can tell. And the Acer Aspire S7 was one of the few really stylish Acer machines. Anyway, it looks nice, it's kind of shiny, and it doesn't really show fingerprints either. What is unusual is, see this right here and this over here? It has a U-shaped bracket hinge mounted with some screws on the sides. Actually pretty sturdy, and Acer has a whole technical paper explaining to us press how well built it actually is and how sturdy, which is a nice thing because we've seen Easel style hinges before, not just on Acer products, but certainly on the Dell XPS 12, and they have weathered well, but they sometimes can strike you as being delicate. Apparently, they're pretty durable, so that's nice. There's a big slot here for your finger to lift it up, and they've also designed torque on the hinge so you can open it with one finger, which is nice, but at the same time, I'm knocking the whole machine over, trying to make this thing wobble. It's very stiff in terms of touching the screen, which is important, well, for something that is a touchscreen device. But let's look around a little bit more. The bottom is soft touch plastic. Feels kind of nice. Lots and lots of Phillips head screws here if you want to take it apart. It does have an SSD, or really two, in RAID 0 configuration. That's Acer's claim to fame for high performance, so you get two M2 connection slots inside for that. RAM on this is 8 gigs already. There is no 4 gig model on the market, which is a nice thing. You get plenty of RAM there, so that's as high as you can go. Two big stereo speakers there. Obviously, lots of air ventilation here and exhaust vents over here. This runs on Intel Core U-series CPUs, Core i5, Core i7. We're looking at the Haswell model, 4th generation Intel. They'll be refreshing it with Broadwell 5th generation, but nothing will change in the machine other than the CPU change, which could result in slightly cooler performance and maybe a little bit battery life improvement there. On the sides of the machine, we have your usual number of Ultrabook-y kind of ports. We have two USB 3.0 ports, color-coded, full-size HDMI port. We have our combo audio jack right there, lock slot as well. Kind of a nice curve to the design here. It's an interesting mishmash of lines, angles, and curves of design. In some parts of the design, like I think the curve, are actually very aesthetically pleasing. On the other side, we have yet another USB port. That's our power and an SD card slot. And we have a little blank in here. So you can see that the card will stick partially out when you have it inserted. So no Ethernet, but that's not unusual for Ultrabooks. Very few of them have built-in Ethernet. No ports on the back. There's just ventilation there. Power button is on the side, so if you're using it in tablet or any other position, you actually have access to the power button, which is, well, logical and not uncommon again. Now, there are two configurations available. There's a Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. Notice how for 2015, 256 gig is becoming the new standard for a lot, not all, but a lot of Ultrabooks. That also is in a RAID 0 configuration. They all have Intel Wi-Fi AC 7265, so that's dual band Wi-Fi AC with Bluetooth inside. So that model is $999, which is a pretty good price actually, and you got a Core i5 in there for the price. Now we're looking at the more expensive edition here, and this has a Core i7 instead of the 2 gigahertz, and again, Haswell generation CPU, a 512 gig SSD in RAID 0, wicked fast that is, 8 gigs of RAM and the same Wi-Fi. and it has a higher resolution display. Your $999 model has a touchscreen and it supports the Active Pen, and we're going to talk about that a bit more later. That's full HD for $999, and our more expensive $1,500 model also gets you a 2560 by 1440 sharp IPS display. Not IGZO, just a sharp IPS display. That's quite pleasing and nice. So let's take a look at that display now. By the way, typical of Acer, they have it set up so that even if it's turned on, when you open it up, it will turn on. You can, of course, change it if you like. Touch screen there with 10 points of multi-touch. So again, we have the 2560 by 1440 display. So what if you want to use it like a tablet? You give it a push, and notice how it's nice and stiff. It doesn't go wee and swing everywhere, right? So you can put it in a variety of positions. But first, let's try something like that. So just the touchpad is visible now. Makes it a little bit more ergonomic for touching. What if you want it even lower? You can do that. Now, if you push on it like this, it'll move a little bit. It'll start collapsing. There's your full tablet position. Well, what if you want to do it in presentation mode? Then, well, now obviously the display is facing back the other way. So you've got presentation mode. What if you want to do that Lenovo 10 mode? You just pick it up and turn it around and do it like so, and put it at whatever angle you want. The hinge is pretty sturdy and stiff again. The whole assembly is very nicely done there, actually. So there it is. Notice there's no capacitive or mechanical Windows home button there. So if you want to go to the home screen, you have to do the side swiping on the screen or tapping on the screen to get to where you want to go. So that's a little bit different that they actually left that out. I'm honestly okay with that. That's fine with me. So versatile machine, yeah, light enough that this is actually usable this way. Nice way of doing a presentation right here or watching a movie, something like that. Takes up less space than it would if it were deployed in traditional laptop mode. In terms of audio, you can see we have Dolby Digital Plus audio here. You've got different presets for movie versus games versus music and all that sort of thing. It does make a difference. By default, the volume leveler is turned on, we notice on this. The sound virtualizer is turned off. We turned it on, and you've got a bunch of different effects you can go for here. We're going to leave it flat. Just keep that in mind when you hear the sound later. It's pretty darn good from the speakers. This is the Microsoft Signature Edition model. If you get the Core i7 with the 512 gig SSD and the higher resolution display, it's sold by Microsoft as a Signature Edition. So, very clean. Nothing on here but the software. Fresh Paint is preloaded. Actually, Microsoft does make that, and it makes perfect sense here because, in fact, this does have an optional pen. And, well, it's a good time to talk about that. Now, Acer actually didn't send us their own Acer Active Pen, which sells for $50. It's a Synaptics digitizer. That's a change. They're not using N-Trig like they did for the last generation models of their convertibles with an active digitizer. Synaptics has improved a lot. We have the latest generation Dell pen in-house, and this is the HP one, which I like quite well. And I find pressure curves are very good. It supports 256 levels of pressure sensitivity. And of course, you get palm projection too on this. Now, one thing to keep in mind, there are no WinTab drivers for Synaptics pens for Wacom, yes, for N-Trig, yes, but no, not for Synaptics. For those of you using especially older versions of Photoshop, if you're using Corel Painter that depends on WinTab support, you're going to be out of luck for pressure sensitivity. But we're going to look at some modern programs that use the Windows Ink API, for example, like Fresh Paint. So here we have their sample tiger, and I'm just going to do all sorts of light strokes, heavy strokes, really light strokes. This is fantastic. And yes, I can rest my hand on the screen. I'm putting my hand on the screen now. And it's also keeping up. There's not too much pen latency. More latency than there is on Wacom or N-Trig at this point. And once in a while, if you're going fast, it might miss a stroke if you're a fast sketch artist or a fast writer. But overall, for art, this is a much better experience than I've seen from Synaptics before. It just keeps getting better, which is nice to see because it was a real disaster when it first launched on a few Dell products more than a year ago. Coming up to speed fast now. And now let's look at Sketchbook Pro. So here we are in Sketchbook Pro, and again, very light line. You can barely see it on the screen, probably on the video. Really, really nice. If you're doing just a gentle fill, you can do that kind of thing. Now I'm pressing hard. Obvious difference there. Now let's see how fast it can keep up with the swirly lines. That's not too bad, actually. That's pretty good. I can see some lag and delay there, but overall, Not bad, not bad at all. So I wouldn't rule this out for artwork. Now, if you're real serious, if you're professional, if you need your version of Photoshop to work again, like I said, Corel Painter or other art applications that rely on WinTab, then this isn't the product for you. But if that's not the case, if you're into Art Rage or Sketchbook or any of the Metro apps for painting and drawing, it's going to work fine. Now let's look at Journal next, Windows Journal, and see how it does with there. Also, OneNote's going to work the same way. Now this is supporting both print and cursor for the most part well. Once in a while it does miss a print stroke. But overall, it's just fine for note-taking. It works quite nicely. So again, if you can't find the Acer pen, I'm sure they're not thrilled I'm telling you this, the HP pen is pretty easy to find in Best Buy, and it does the job too. So how about that more traditional input method, otherwise known as the keyboard and the trackpad? The keyboard is roomy, it's well laid out, it's a little weird. I don't know what it is with Acer and keyboards, they like to mess with things. The nice thing is it has EL backlighting, it has that kind of cool blue lighting. It's a little hard to see right now. Let me shut off a light and see if you can see it a little bit more. A little faint blue glow underneath the keys. There it is. You can see it a little bit. So it's a very pleasant backlighting, and it's also using very little power, which is quite nice as well. Anyway, the keyboard, a little bit abnormal because look at your little teeny weeny caps lock key over there. Look at the undersized escape key. Where's my delete key? It's not anywhere up here. Oh, look, it's that big key over here that, well, you're just going to probably hit by accident. It's a little bit weird. Happily, the rest of it's pretty normal. Key travel is a little lower than normal, 1.1 millimeters. 1.5 would be kind of your Ultrabook-y average or standard. I know some of you asked what exactly that would be. That is it. Also, it requires more force than normal, force input. There could be a reason for that. Because it's such a short travel, you tend to hit the keys hard. So it may make some sense that we do tend to use more force on extremely shallow keyboards. It's not the world's worst keyboard. It's not as bad as, say, the Sony Vaio Flip series, which were just springy, mushy. This is nice, firm, damped. It has a good feel in terms of that. The keys are fairly large, not shaped or anything like that particularly, but just not a whole wild amount of travel. So not terrible, but it's okay. Again, we have the Microsoft Signature Edition here, so there's no extra trackpad drivers loaded. In fact, it's really hard to find out in Device Manager who even makes this. It's roomy, it's oversized, it's very good. If you like a basic, simple, accurate, it tracks your finger well, it handles two finger gestures just fine, no other bells and whistles, then you're going to like this. It's predictable, it's not flaky, it's not jumpy. I like it. So how's the color gamut of the display? It's very good. You can see 99% of sRGB, 78% of Adobe RGB. That we like to see. That's right up there with the top Ultrabooks costing around $1,000 and up. Color accuracy of the display from the factory, not well calibrated. It looked nice, but it wasn't very good. However, the good news is, using our Spider 4 Pro colorimeter, we were able to calibrate and get in line nicely. So it's not a deficiency of the display, really. It was just some poor factory calibration. Now, in terms of performance, right here is our Crystal Disk Mark scores for the, wow, very high scores for the 512 gig SSD, which is really a RAID 0 configuration. Even if you get a smaller capacity, you should expect to see similar numbers. Those are very good numbers. So how about the rest of the benchmark numbers? Well, it did very well on PC Mark 7 as well, where it scored 5403. Now, anything around 5,000 for a Core i5 to Core i7 Ultrabook is quite good. And granted, this does have the 2 GHz Core i7, but there's not a big difference between Core i5 and Core i7 in the U series ULB CPU. So good numbers there, and PC Mark 7 does put a lot of weight on how well storage does, so obviously numbers like those are going to help. W Prime Computing Pi, which really does look at CPU prowess, 18.8 seconds, which is exactly where it should be for this kind of CPU and this kind of machine. Geekbench 3, the 64-bit test, 3015 single-core, multi-core, 6077. So it's a fast little bugger, it is. Not bad at all for a 13-inch Ultrabook. Pretty good performance there. It's not a quad-core workstation or gaming laptop. It does just rely on Intel HD integrated graphics. This being Haswell has Intel HD 4400 graphics. You'll get Intel HD 5500 graphics once Broadwell is available. Similar performance between those, a little bit of improvement with the 5th generation. Anyway, the difference between Haswell and Broadwell really isn't about performance so much as it's about battery life. Now, Acer claims that the full HD model of this is good for up to 8 hours of use with the battery that is sealed inside. We, of course, have the higher resolution model here, and it's more like 6.5 hours. I think they claim 7.5, but in real use with brightness set to 50%, we are seeing it at 6.5 hours, and that's with Wi-Fi on and active, and the usual mix of productivity tasks, working in Word, streaming a 45 to 50-minute episode on Netflix, doing social networking, doing email, editing a few photos in Photoshop, that sort of thing. The charger, you're not going to be wanting for cord. Plenty of charger cord right here. And it's a very compact, very light charger, very small, so really not going to put much of a load on it. It's typical for an Ultrabook 45-watt output. Now this ships with Windows 8.1, 64-bit, standard laptop stuff right there, and here is our homepage right here. We have it set to 150% scaling in IE, and from the factory they had it set to the largest possible scaling, 200%. We dialed that back to 150% too, and I think you might agree that the icons are reasonably sized, or you can actually read things if you want to. It's not so bad. I think 200% was just a little too large. Anyway, let's play a video so you can hear the speakers on this and see how it looks when playing video. So here's our Panasonic Lumix LX100 camera review, a really nice camera by the way, and let's take a look at the video review. But meanwhile, the pictures look nice and sharp there. The text is small but still easy to read at this zoom level. It's 60% volume, it's loud and full. The iris is kind of open up on there, so if you're into that kind of thing for quicker shooting, so you don't have to rip this off, you can do that. So that's 1080p video playback there. At 60% volume, the speakers sound very loud, very full, very natural. Nice screen for doing this sort of thing. Now, not everything is perfect when you get a high resolution like 220 ppi display. Modern programs like IE will support Windows high DPI scaling. If you have some older legacy programs, you may, like older versions of Photoshop, for example, unless you're going with the newest versions, you're going to see small menus, small controls, things like that. So keep in mind that that is something to deal with. And this is also available as a 1080p model, which is no slouch. I think is a very good matching resolution for a 13.3-inch display. And there you can even go with 100% scaling, or no scaling really, if your eyes are good, or 125% to boost things up just a little bit. So that's the Acer Aspire R13. I have to say, they did a great job with this hinge. It's just easy to use, it's stiff, it's firm. The whole machine is light, it's very quick. It may be aesthetically challenged depending on your viewpoint, but hey, the functionality, the features, really nice for the money. So that's the Acer Aspire R13. It's available now. Again, it started out life as Haswell, getting refreshed with Broadwell, but nothing else is changing beside the CPU inside. And definitely a very usable 13.3-inch convertible, and really good stuff for the price and very fast performance. And better yet, you can actually use a pen with it, which is pretty nice. Not many models on the market support an active pen. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit mobiletechreview.com for our full written review and hit that subscribe button.